Lovely. So, good evening, everyone, and good evening, Franco.
Good evening.
Really good of you to join us. So excited about this evening. I'm going to just talk, if I just run through what we said about the introduction, just to give people a bit of an idea about what you do, but you could elaborate on that. So what I put out, Franco DeNicola's perception of humanity and the world greatly diverges from conventional ways of thinking. Rather than abiding to traditional belief systems and mindsets, he sees beyond their conceptual creation, recognizing that there is more to us than what our current human experience has led us to believe. A shift in consciousness has been recently leading more of us to not only question the ego-driven structures controlling our world, but to awaken to who we truly are beyond the mind and the physicality. In the midst of these unique times of social upheaval and spiritual awakening, it is with great love for humanity that Franco dedicates himself to sharing his insights and understandings with others. Franco's work is simply aimed at assisting individuals in creating realignments with their personal lives while re-establishing a oneness of consciousness in this currently segregated world. For the past 3 decades, Franco has shared his unique insights on the complexities of the human experience to individuals and audiences around the world. Franco knew from a very young age that his sole purpose is to bring clarity and deeper understanding of the human experience and our true purpose. Franco's down-to-earth and genuine approach reaches people at a deeper level, triggering and igniting a recognition of one's own divinity, opening your soul to a higher level of consciousness and personal freedom. Franco's message embraces our intrinsic nature of love and oneness, as every individual plays an integral part in changing the whole. So I thought that was from your website. Absolutely lovely, Franco.
Well, thank you for reading that out.
Mo, that's with us tonight, Maureen, but her name's Mo, she sent me the recording of you having the discussion on the THEW ship, THEW ship.
Oh, right.
I've forgotten the chap's name that you were with.
Geez, I'd have to...
Oh, no worries, yeah. Yeah, no worries. But it was so interesting what you...
Andrew Moore, Andrew.
Yes.
Andrew,
yes.
Yes.
Andreas or Andrew.
Hey, Andreas, yes, Andreas. Tales of the Ship, that's the show he has.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it was so interesting, all what you talked about there.
Yeah, so I do with him. I don't know if anybody knows Todd, also from Soulology. I do quite a few. I do 2 a month with him. I have another one this week. Plus, I have a couple of channels, the Advancing Consciousness podcast and the Advancing Consciousness series, which I do get into quite a bit of detail with all the different mechanics, if you want to call it that. I just use that as loosely, of the human experience, what's going on. You know, there's a lot of information there that we all know to some degree from the core of ourselves, but most of us haven't been accessing it, and more of us are coming to that access point and introducing it into our reality, introducing it into our life stream. And right now, you know, I do put out fairly regular podcasts and the series. And then, of course, I do quite a few different shows. So all of it is basically to allow people to, you know, trigger their memory, to be involved in the energies that come with it too, because there's a lot going on right now in the world on what looks like the physical plane, but there's also a lot going in from a spiritual realm. And when I say spiritual, I'm not referring to a lot of people's labels and definitions of spirituality, because true spirituality is basically source in action, source in creation. That's what it is. So we're all source. There's nothing outside of source. We're all this beautiful, powerful field that we are. And the field itself, or what we could call source, basically at that point in time decided, a very long time ago, to actually experience itself and to provide opportunities to use its capability to create alternate versions of itself and to be able to create playgrounds and all types of experiences. And while doing so, not only becoming experientially enriched, but also be able to access more of its capacities and to even expand even further. So us, that looks like we're in form, which is basically a holographic projection, are all spirit in action, spirit playing on different playgrounds. And even the playground itself, because like if you're talking about Earth, Earth is a sentient being, it is spirit in action also. It has the same level of consciousness, it can communicate, it does, you know, it supports many, many, many sentient beings, and also what we can consider life forms of any sort at this point. And every planet does that to some degree or another. So yeah, here we are, these beautiful spiritual beings having what looks like human experience, but we're, you know, taking on and encoding into this physical expression, and we get to play. And we're not here by accident, because we chose this particular playground. And I call it playground because that's what it is. It's a playground.
Yeah.
And the reason we chose this playground, because we at a soul level, as our multidimensional aspect of ourselves, because we're made up of various parts, because we have a body, which is sentient extension of Gaia. We have a human entity, which is a kind of a localized soul that actually incarnates on planet Earth. And then we have our multidimensional soul that incarnates on multi-dimensional states, being on many dimensions, many planets. It stays in form and non-form, can take an active role in taking on form, but also an active role to assist other aspects of itself as form. So, and that's the combination which creates one unit of expression, usually referred to as the mind, or whatever you want to call it. But then the mind itself is actually much more than what we have the brain, because it's outside of all of that. It's our whole energy field that plays with all other energy fields at the same time. So here we are, you know, we chose this particular journey, very carefully orchestrated every part of it, choosing the body, choosing the playmates, so meaning the parents at first, and then all the siblings and whatever else, choosing where on the planet, when, with the basic energy alignments, you know, the genders, you name it, and positioning a sequence of experiences to bring us to a point where we're ready to actually step up for what we are coming here to do, which is basically transform and upgrade the human experience and transform and upgrade the playground. Because everything is, I wouldn't say dependent, but interconnected with us. So Gaia evolves with us. So what we call planet Earth evolves with us, and we evolve with that. And when we're talking about evolution, we're not just talking about, you know, the basic evolution that people talk about. We're talking about an evolution, an upgrade of your own essence in all facets. And within that, you create and access points that have never been accessed before. So yeah, we are all here, and we've come here to play in very powerful ways and to have a powerful experience. So
can you tell us a bit then about how have you come to know all of this? What's your background really to?
Okay, well, I'm going to push the envelope a little further, because I don't share it very commonly, because it kind of blows some people's circuits. The soul that's embodying my physicality is from another parallel dimension. It's an advanced dimension. And the soul that's embodying me is now united with 84 other souls, or it's actually 84 souls in total, 83 souls, including its twin soul. But I'm not trying to say Franco is a physicality. Yes, the physicality went through various modifications and so forth to be able to host this particular soul. So it does have extra DNA and all of that stuff, and it's programmed slightly different. But in general, so the soul, the reason it came here was because it was directly involved with the retooling of planet Earth 15,000 years ago, and also with a team of engineers, and not in this form, of course, it was in a different form. And it actually encoded, created, updated, and modified the matrix, which is the organic matrix. We're not talking about the matrix we've been living with for a very long time that's been recently turned off, and was involved directly in reseeding the planet, retooling all the operating system, and then actually working with the team to create new physical forms, which we're made of. Our physical forms is a blend of 12 different species. And these species are blended to a certain ratio, and they alter slightly for the different individuals, but they're still basically, now some only have as low as 9 and some have as high as 14. But in general, the bulk of it. And then it was encoded in such a fashion, it operated very naturally and very harmonious with everything around it. So if you're looking at all the different plant lives, all the different animals, you're looking at the birds, the reptiles, the oceanic kingdom, all of that was all, they all originated from different planets, and they were brought here with slight modification to all be harmonious on planet Earth. Now, of course, we've had a lot of species that have left, and a few more species have come in. You know, there's been a bit of an exchange. So because it was directly involved in the complete retooling and everything else, because of what we're going through right now, the soul had decided through its team to take an active role to come back to assist with the transformation. Not to do it for us, because that would disempower us, but to work with us. So the information I have access to is just my soul communicating through me. And it takes kind of over in a sense. And it basically shares what it shares. It has a lot of memories. And of course, it's not only that, I do travel in other dimensions, and I end up on ships, I end up on other planets, because even though the physicality leaves a representation here in an altered state, it actually reformulates itself into another, or projects itself in a holographic projection on another planet, so forth. So it can still experience this, maybe not the same level of sensorial experience, but pretty close. And the beauty of it, that it downloads always that, so that I actually have it in memory of in this physical form. So that's the thing. Now, I arrived here back in 1957, so that's kind of exposing my age. And at that point in time, the parents I took was a very heavy polarization, in the sense of creating a very unconscious and very limited opportunity to kind of get any support, so that I actually got to experience the full intensity of the human experience. Of course, we went through poverty, alcoholism, and I don't mean myself, but in the family dynamics and whatever else. And so it created quite a scene. Now, I remember as a child, of course, I came pretty close to what I have access to now. And I remember looking, and I'm going, after a while, I was going, wow, I think I'm here a little too early, because to me, when I looked around and saw people walking around, to me, it was like walking zombies making other walking zombies. And I don't want to be, being in a way insulting, but it just, the way that people were operating, because they were kind of a very sleep, unconscious operating system, where they were actually just following their programming, whatever the program would have been. All of us carry programs, and we're going through that reversal process now. But anyways, that stayed with me till about age 4. And that's when my guide had said, listen, we're going to have to remove 80% of your memory access, because you have to have the regular human experience. Well, regular for me was a little different than regular for other people. And when I say that, because 20% was already a lot in a sense, even though that lasted for quite a few years. And that allowed me to have more capacities, because when you know too much and you're in a playground where nothing is reflective of that, you can create your own little reality, but you have no one to play with, sort of thing, right? So it was very difficult to connect with others in that respect. Now, I was very vocal, so I did get myself into some hot water here and there, because as far as I was concerned, what I was kind of open, share things. Yeah, I was restrictive to how much I shared, but at the same time, I had no issues with, we came from a family that was very religious, and we came from a family that, played a certain thing, and I would just be sharing what I was observing, what was really going on, and so forth. And that was a bit of a shock for them. So there was a little bit of feedback that was less than exciting to experience, but it was pretty cool with that. So that's a long thing. But so at age 4, 80% went off. I did have reduced access until 2001. And in
That was
2000,
surely better for you, though, wasn't it? Because that would have been an awful lot at that age.
oh yes, it was. It was actually, at first I didn't think it would be a good thing, but even that 20% was difficult to deal with at times, because you knew what was going on. You can see how people worked and whatever was going on, and the game that was being played out. And but if I had the full 100% for 63 years, that would have been really tough to do, and it would have been harder to relate to the human experience. And I did go through a period of time for 10 years where I did end up embodying 1,000 people. It was a little bit over 1,000 people, where I would actually have to connect with them and be able to download and observe through their eyes, sort of thing, to give me even more broader understanding of the human experience. And it was from male and female, from different cultures and different parts of the world and so forth. So it gave me quite a variety. So it allowed me to understand it so that I would be able to share. And I've been sharing this information for about 35 years now. Of course, it upgraded even further as we went along after 2001. It didn't all come back all at once. It was staged between 3 years or so. So I do have full access now. And but now we have a lot of beautiful playmates here on the planet that are, have been opening their eyes and been, connecting with themselves. They're able to see outside of the game that we've been playing to be able to access more. So that's been amazing. Now it doesn't feel such alone, because it did feel alone. You were on your path by yourself. You couldn't communicate with anybody.
Did you not have a teacher that you could, because usually when the student's ready, the teacher appears, or was there anything like that for you?
I had a guide that kept showing up and would show up fairly regular. And the guide is known as Yeshua or Jesus or whatever. And he would present himself every so often. We would have conversation. And he started showing up since I was a little kid, shortly after 1 year old. And now I hardly ever see him. You're on your way type of thing. I do have a link in a sense where he would share certain things at times. And when I say he, I mean, that's the physical he represented at that time. Yeah, it's not that of that nature.
But you didn't have anyone in the physical form that?
No, I didn't. I did connect with certain people over the years, but it always turned out that I was actually teaching them or, sharing with what I knew. Yeah. But no, I didn't. And it was more with myself going into this altered state, be able to talk to alien beings, if you want to call it that, our brother, sister souls from other planets and so forth, and they would present. So that was the team that I really had. I didn't have a human team. Wow. Even today, today it's like I communicate, get different viewpoints. Everybody's got beautiful skill sets and whatever else. But it's just open. We just keep it that way. It's not like I'm getting guided by anybody at this particular time. I end up usually doing the other way around. I'm guiding them. But Yeah, it's fine with me. I'm good with this.
Oh, well, I've seen a few now of your amazing. Wow, they're 2 hour long nearly, most of them, aren't they? But you've done 64, is it now?
Yes, 66 as of last week. The 67th will be tomorrow. It was supposed to be today, but it was going to conflict with this time, so we moved it over to 4 p.m. Eastern time
Oh,
tomorrow.
bless you. Thank you.
Yeah, and then the podcast come out on a fairly regular
So
thing. There's about 30 of those out there. We started that much later, so there's less of those around. But there's more.
Amount of information there. Amazing. So generous of your time to do that.
Well, it's my pleasure to share as much as possible. And I really feel a strong urge and directive from within. It's really my soul saying, okay, it's time for us to share this and not to have restrictions. And that's why we put it, we don't charge for it so that people can access it. Of course, we accept contributions and things, and there have been some pretty generous people that, have kept us, because this is all I do. I put all my work in that. I do sessions, but I haven't been doing that for a while, only because there's much more that I need to work on, and my soul seems to keep me busy even in the other realms. So,
well, you know your purpose and you know you're on track, which is incredible, isn't it? Like how many people want to know what their purpose is? Although I do think people are opening up far more now to knowing what their purpose is. This last year, the awakening for most people, I thought, well, I'm nowhere near awake, but, I was on that journey. But in this last year, what I've learned and found out is just really incredible, to what I did know, and certainly nothing to what you know. So what I did hear when you did that interview was about the moon, and that absolutely fascinated me because you said that the moon was put in place. Is that what you said? The moon was put in place 10,000 years ago?
Yes, it was. Just to backtrack real quickly, 15,000 years ago, the planet was retooled, it was completely reseeded. These physicalities that we're all in right now was from that design 15,000 years ago. It was programmed to operate completely different than what we are experiencing. And so after 5,000 years, there was a group that presented themselves on planet Earth to give us an opportunity to have a challenging experience. And one of the things they offered at the time, and they did this on other planets too, and it was allowed because the souls were kind of open to the challenge. And so what they did is that they offered that, instead of being able to be totally connected, we were going to experience polarity, experience separation. We were going to experience a inverted world. So to do that, what they did is they wanted to create an inverted matrix, okay? And what is an inverted matrix? It's a matrix, okay, just to understand, so that we understand, a matrix is a very elaborate operating system that creates consistency on the planet, and this exists on all planets, and all the matrices create an environment for all of us to experience a form of consistency with variance in it. Now, so we can't be out of the matrix, or we don't have a playground, we don't see it. But the inverted matrix was a add-on. Now, to have this inverted matrix, because you have to understand the organic matrix is connected to other planets. So it's connected to the matrix of each and every planet in our solar system, and it's connected to the galaxy planets that we're connected to, including our own sun. And what happens is it's like it's online. So there's a communication back and forth, so it continues to upgrade. So each of the planets in our solar system, and we have more than what we see, are, as they go through advancement and upgrade their experiences, that's kind of filtered in back, or streamed back, and the same thing the other way around, streamed back to upgrade our matrix. Okay, at least have that as in the platform. Now, the matrix, the organic matrix was designed, and it was quite a unique, it was quite a feat. This is quite rare in a lot of the planets because most of the planets don't have that. The matrices are designed to work in a certain dimensional frequency, meaning dimensional consciousness. So you can say, well, we can be in fifth dimensional consciousness on planet Earth and you can be in fifth dimensional consciousness on another planet. It's still experienced very differently because each body and each operating system experiences it differently. Consciousness, fifth dimensional consciousness is the amount of consciousness you have access to, but what do you do with the consciousness is what's important, is what you plug into your reality and what you plug into your playground. So in understanding that, so all this upgrade, so our organic matrix was designed, and this is the unique part, to start off at organic third dimensional consciousness with the capacity to go all the way to ninth dimensional consciousness. And the planet would upgrade accordingly. Instead of being fixed at, say, third or fourth or fifth or sixth, and then when you're done experiencing that experience, then you go to another planet to experience something else. But this one, the uniqueness was it would evolve with humanity. And that was the other part. Plus, we were encoded, individually, all of us were encoded to be able to maneuver from organic 3D all the way to organic 90. And right now, if this modification did not occur 10,000 years ago, we would be in seventh dimension.
Right. God.
That's where we would be right now, but
Yeah.
we're not. Of course, we're still. Now, the operating system and our own operating system would be to experience itself to the max and then step into and plug in a higher level of consciousness, which we would be introducing, say, the fourth dimension, and then the fifth, and then so forth. So when the offering was done 10,000 years ago to have this inverted matrix come in, there was nothing to support this in matrix because it was going to be a closed loop. So for them to project this, they needed to bring in a satellite. So the satellite ended up being a hollowed out planet with a tremendous amount of mechanicalness in it, which happens to be the moon. So prior to 10,000 years ago, the moon did not exist. It was brought in, okay? It is actually a mechanical device in a sense. Well, it's a hollowed out planet that wasn't used anymore, a smaller planet, but it's mechanical in nature because of the way it keeps its orbit, because it does not run, it's not in the loop of the whole solar system. It is following a loop. This is why it does not have a strict pattern of how it moves. And also it doesn't even rotate. So there's always the dark side, and then there's the one side that we always see. The dark side has another housing of another set of beings that operate in that on that side. But on the front side is basically where the satellite component is. So that projected the so-called inverted matrix. Now, the purpose of the inverted matrix was to make everything backwards. What is real is made to look false. Everything that's false is made to look real. It actually projected separation, which is not exactly how it is, because we're all one and all connected to each other, but we're all individual expressions. It created separation energetically so that we would actually use different spectrums of light. This is why we have light and dark, because both are fragmentation of the whole, which is what we call 0 point, or what we call holistic frequency, a full spectrum frequency. So we would split that up. The other thing the inverted matrix did was actually to perpetuate, not advancement into, say, organic 3D to organic 4D, 5D. It actually went into inverted 3D and inverted 2D. Now, inverted 3D was 3D backwards, and then inverted 2D was complete unconsciousness, where everything was still backwards, but you had no reference point that you were a spiritual being in any way, shape, or form, to the point of maximum denial, no matter how it was presented. So that came into place 10,000 years ago. Now, what else changed? The operating systems in our bodies was changed also. There's two parts to that. So in fact, originally, we did not even need to eat. We basically picked up our energy from what the sun was offering, what Gaia, the planet, was offering, the energies we would accept from the water, and also the energies from the air. All of that was all we required. We did not need to eat. Now, we had a digestive system, but that was only used if we wanted to have an intimate connection with fruit, because it was only designed to process fruit, because fruit doesn't even need digesting. It actually goes through your system and stimulates. It's like taking marijuana, I'm just using it as an example, but it's not, where you actually, the fruit offers its frequency, offers its encodement, so you can have a very powerful connection to that. We were also able to connect with each other. There wasn't all this other polarity stuff, but we were very connected to nature. And there was harmony. We didn't fight, kill each other, do anything of that nature, including the animal kingdom. There was no food chain, okay? That was all plugged in to create that intensity, but it wasn't there before. Now, with all of that in place, what ended up happening is that because of the amount of consciousness that we still had access to, they had to step it up to the next part. And that was to create the chakras, and then, which is basically a split of communication channels, and then also shut off our DNA. So 10 of the DNA strands were turned off, and 2 of them were modified to have very minimal access through a filtering device, meaning that it would actually change the spectrum of access, okay? Yeah. Now, you have to understand, each of the DNAs represents the species that we're connected to, that make us up, because we are made up of 12 different species. Now, each DNA not only carries the genetic codes, but it has the telomeres, which are the antennas that maintained a level of communication. So one of our DNAs is Pleiadian, and the Pleiadian, as they go through evolution, as deeper realization and further enlightenment, we would receive that. And as we are experiencing things, it would be transmitted back to them, okay? So there was a communication which created an upgrade, not only in our physical representation, but also how we modified and expanded our reality, our personal reality, and so forth. So that interfered because there was too much streaming coming along, so they had to back that off. So that came out of the equation. Now, we used to be connected with everything. So now they split up and created 7 separate channels. We have more than that, but let's focus on the 7. And the chakras was, the crown chakra would be able to have its access to spirit, which is basically source, essence, creator, but as localized, not to the point you can experience it throughout, which was originally the plan. The third eye would give us access and communication to other souls, but with filters, of course, and with restrictions, so that we would only be able to communicate with other souls on an unlimited base. Your throat chakra, which was basically the what created or shaped light into form through sound, and also the energies it would transmit, because we would be able to change our field around us very easily before. So now it got localized into a chakra. And of course, that had some modifications to it too, so that it restricted. Then your heart chakra is your direct connection to your multidimensional soul. And that, again, had its veils put in so that we would be able to receive very little connection, or at least level of communication. Of course, when you went to your solar plexus, that was your connection to your human entity. Now, the human entity is a soul. It's a planetary, what do you call it? It's a soul that is bound, or not bound, but is specifically only incarnates on planet Earth, so it can continue to evolve in the human experience, and doesn't bring the multidimensional, but brings in many, many different physical form representation and consciousness and so forth. So the solar plexus, this is why we go to our gut feel or whatever you want to call it, that is connecting to your human entity, which has a lot of experiences. Now, you talk about savants or people or kids or whatever that have really elaborate expressions and experience. For example, they've never played a musical instrument and they pick up an instrument, they can play beautiful music. Okay, that's usually the human entity that's working through that physicality to express many years of experiences that it's gained from other incarnation. So so that it comes in. Now, it's very specific why it chose that particular place and time for that body and whatever else. So when you're going into your sacral chakra, that is your connection to another individual. Could be a partner, could be whatever. And that is body-to-body communication that it's so there's a sharing of experiences and also everything that's involved in the energies of it, but also the consciousness of it, but also what do you call the gender offerings or whatever it is of that particular part. And then your root chakra is your connection channel to Gaia, okay? Gaia through not only Gaia, but all the sentient beings on the planet. So this is why people a lot of times end up saying, well, if your root chakra is disconnected, you lose your grounding, because the physicality loses its grounding because it ends up not having that relationship that it's designed to do, which is basically with Gaia. Because you have to understand, the body is an extension of Gaia. It's already a sentient being in itself. It has an innate consciousness that continues to evolve. So we have several innate levels of consciousness. So the body represents the Gaia's innate consciousness. The human entity has its consciousness from all its multiple incarnations on planet Earth. The multidimensional soul, which a lot of people refer to, that is the one that actually brings in skill sets from all different playgrounds. And then we create one unit, which basically is what we refer to as what we call the human experience, but that mind, it's the mind. Now, we have a brain, of course. The brain is designed left and right. And the right brain is the part that's connected to our body, that communicates with the body, communicates with the human entity, communicates with the soul, communicates through the third eye, takes all that information and creates a reality which is streamed to the left brain. And the left brain actually takes this field of just spectrums of light and frequency and creates what we call form. And this is why we see what looks like solid and real. That's the left brain that does that process. But there's that communication. Now, with all of those changes that occurred, there was one more caveat that got plugged in, okay? Humanity was still advancing and could not be restricted to the same degree. So they came up with a software. It's an artificial intelligence software. And it was installed in the left brain, we call the ego.
Right,
okay?
Yes.
The purpose of the ego is to utilize the inverted matrix. It is utilizing that invertedness and create stories and so forth and create enough distraction and busyness so that we cannot, look further than the game we're playing. But it doesn't stop there. The ego also creates multiple labels and definitions. Now it learns, that's why it's artificial intelligence, it's constantly learning, and it's observing everything that's going on the planet, and it's learning from it to sustain and maintain that inverted matrix. This is why the ego keeps you so distracted and disconnected, because it wants to keep you playing the game and not to realize anything outside of the game. And that's how it's done. Now, of course, it went schizophrenic in a way because it created multiple personalities. And I'm sure all of you have experienced where the ego tells you to do one thing, and then it's kind of condemning you while you're doing it. And then when you get there, it's going to blame you for taking that choice. It really plays that game. And a lot of times what happens, it gives you multiple streams. So it's saying, well, you should do this. No, maybe you should do this. And it just keeps you busy. And so what happens is that overrides most of that intuitiveness, that communication that you have from the soul level, from your human entity, from your body. And so these were all part and parcel. So the moon was a satellite, the inverted matrix was put in. So we started to operate in inverted matrix where everything is backwards. We made modifications to the body so that we wouldn't have the same levels of connections, and created all those fragments, chakras, disconnected from DNA, and created that particular reality that we've been playing up to this point in time. And that's where we are at the moment with all of this.
And why did that happen then? Why was that all happening? Because did I hear you say that before the chakras were put in, we were one channel of love?
Yes. Well, because at that point in time, we didn't require chakras, and eventually we won't. We actually never required it, but it was put in because of the fact that that was the only way to be able to fragment our connections and alter the fragments of the connections, where before we were already very connected with everything. We had no problems communicating with spirit, because spirit was our essence and we felt it. We had that communication all the time. Our soul, whatever we're sharing, was all part of that. We created very easily with just an intention, everything came about. The connection with Gaia, that was like normal. I mean, just the fact you could feel, and there was such a communication. You have to understand that the planet is always communicating. All the sentient beings on the planet, all the animal kingdoms, all the plant life, everything else was communicating. So we were learning from many, many viewpoints. So if you had a deer, for example, that was just roaming, you would be able to feel whatever was going on. There was one other thing I mentioned. The other thing that got modified was the emotions. I meant to say that. Emotions are part of our fundamental operating system. So it is natural. However, what got modified, it got, what some people call hijacked, but I just call it took on control. So emotions were a physical representation of whatever experience you were having, and it didn't have polarized emotion. It just had an emotion where you can feel joy, you can feel, love, you can feel that really the excitement and so forth of your creation, your experience, and everything coming back. But the modification and the ego took over the emotion and created polarized emotion. Good, bad, right, wrong, being sad, happy, and whatever it is, but also fear and all of those things that came to be to really distract us. And look at it, when you're having an emotional reaction or an emotional charge, your clarity goes out the window most of the time. Yeah. Especially if you're taking a low vibrational emotion going off. If you've got fear, you have anger, your clarity is not there. You're basically possessed. I'm just using that as a playful word. Yeah. From that, because it becomes an obsession, possession, and you're not in control. This is why it's, sometimes people are sharing, take a few steps back, take a few breaths, get your emotions in check before you respond, before you react, before you make a decision, before you can actually get a clarity. So that was the other part that came in. Now you asked the question, why? Well, it was an offering that came about from these beings. And you have to understand, these gods that everybody talks about, and a lot of the books that have been written, these were just alien beings that, represented themselves in certain ways. Not that there is a deity. There are no deities. We're all equal. We're just at different levels of expression and so forth. And, you get to a certain level, like school. It's not like somebody in kindergarten is less than someone in grade 12, for example. They're just going through different stages of experience, but they're all beautiful divine beings, right? So it's the same thing with, even the ones that actually took the role to create planets and to create realities and experiences are the same as every experiencer, because all of it is source. Everything is spirit. Everything is creation and action. So that's kind of the thing. So none of that was in play. But anyways, there was this hybrid beings that they were on their planet, and what they wanted to do is that they noticed everything was evolving very quickly. They decided that a segment of themselves teamed up and said, listen, we're going to create a hybrid so that we will disconnect and we will choose to play in low vibration and create challenges. And then from that, the planets that they were on didn't work out so well because the vibration of the planets went further, and for them to be able to function, they needed low vibration. So guess what? Then they decided to move on to different planets. We're not the only planet that had this offering came about. So when they presented it to the souls that were on planet Earth at the time, they said, listen, we'll come in, tweak it, give you a bigger challenge. You'll find that when you have this challenge and you succeed to move through this, you will be even more powerful than ever before. You would be more capable than ever before because you're not walking through a very easy walking, easy movement. You're going to go through challenges. Like for all of us, just to relate it back to the human experience, when we have challenges, we become stronger in a very, more than it was possible.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is, even if nobody's disadvantaged when it comes to having a challenging life. Okay. It doesn't matter how traumatic it's been labeled by the ego, whatever it is. We not only chose it, but that was what made us more powerful in a sense to be able to do something very powerfully in our movement forward. So with that understanding, that's how it was offered. We're going to create this challenge. And that's when it was offered. And then we accepted the challenge. Now, the challenge was going to be for an X period of time, but it got extended, and here we are. Now, the reversal process started in 1987, or the end of 86 to 87, on the first level of convergence, and that's when the frequency of the planet started to increase. We had more frequency increases at the end of 2012 going into 2013, and we've had more increases going into 2020, and we're just on that spiral, and everything is speeding up faster and faster. The Schumann frequency going up, the blasts that we're getting from our sun, even the sun, most of you have been around for a while. So you probably, if you focus in your memory, you'll notice even the sun used to be more yellow. Now it's a brighter white. And whenever the skies are not full of chemtrails or whatever it is you want to call it, you can actually feel the intensity of the sun because it's actually expanded its spectrum, and it carries a lot more codes. It creates a lot more energy, and it's there to support us to make these movements, and plus all the energy is coming in at this point in time. So we're doing that reverse. But the point was, it was offered there. Some people like to say that, they were evil, they came here, whatever it is. Well, from a source perspective, there is no evil. There are higher vibration, lower vibration. They play roles. All of us have played different roles at different times, because many of us, have been the saint and been the devil sort of thing. I'm just using that as an analogy, not that they exist that way, but, a game's a game. You take on particular roles. So now what's happening with all these energies that are going on? Oh, one last thing. You can redirect me at any time here because I can go on for hours, but for them, after they put that in, for them to be able to have control, they of course created hybrids. Some people call it the elites and the Kabbalah, whatever it is, but the real top people were actually hybrids. They actually took humans and blended it with these draconian.
Well, that was my next question. That is honestly what I wanted to ask about. Yes. Yeah.
So so it got blended with them. So they were half draconian, and some were even Anunnakis in it. But the draconian Anunnakis are reptiles that were modified. They're hybrids. They're not true reptilians, because reptilians have evolved. They're not the role that they've, people like to label it because they look somewhat the same, but the ones that they're experiencing are the actual hybrids. They're not in their true evolving nature. But anyways, so they created these hybrids and they are on the planet. Of course, they continue to come on the planet too. But the only way they would be able to function is they require low vibration. So then they started encoding and programming fear, survival, then started encoding in the fact of, in some way, that there's some deity that is going to, they have to play a particular role or whatever else. And they've created, and of course, if you look at all our systems, if all of us can observe, if you look at all the systems out there, all of our governmental, educational, health, and all of these systems, the monetary system and so forth, they're all created in that inverted matrix. All of our history, our stories, our programs, our perceptions, our labels, anything that we've taken on was all created in that inverted matrix. So the process that we're going through right now is to deprogram ourselves from all that programming. And so for them to be able to function, this is why all the systems kept pushing fear, polarization, separation, survival, and all of that. And it's still reflected today. Look at what's going on right now. Absolutely. It's like, oh, you got to lock yourself up. You got to do this. There's this devious thing out there that's going to kill you, whatever it is, and a lot of propaganda and so forth. Educational system is all tuned for that. Everything, the media is tuned for that. And so it's all tuned to keep your vibration low so that they actually still have control. Because the thing is, even though control is getting less and less and less, because there's so many more souls or more people that are, getting into a higher vibration, awakening, opening their eyes, whatever you want to see. And right now we're going through what we call a disclosure, but the disclosure is not what a lot of people think. It's about able to see the game, to see that what's going on and be able to make a clear choice rather than blindly just following the patterns and the defaults and whatever else that we've, been playing out up to this point in time. So
can I interrupt?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, well, it's the disparity in wealth and everything, and that's the higher that's running the whole thing, isn't it? Well, it appears to be, and needing the fear and everything. So that's what are you thinking about this time? Does karma come into any of that at all?
Well, that's a good question because that's a loaded one too, but I'll go through it very quickly. Okay.
Thank you.
But yes, see the monetary system, and I'm going to go into the karma. The monetary system, the only reason it exists is to keep people in survival, first of all. Second of all, to keep people imprisoned to survive. So that means you have to work, you have to do something. But if you really look at the game itself, it actually is it acts up as a prison of sorts. You kind of, and you never get to live life. You never get to play the game to your terms. Now, some people say, oh yeah, when I have the money, I can do this. And then of course, even the people that do get the money and so forth, they say, well, I'm living the life. But are they really living the life, or are they living an illusion, which is a projected idea of what life is? Because I can tell you, I've been doing sessions for 35 years with people now, even though I do almost none now. But even the wealthiest people were at a point of depression, at a point of having meaningless lives, saying, I do not enjoy what's going on. In fact, I don't feel like I'm, it doesn't matter. I have access to whatever I have access to, but I don't feel satisfaction. I do not feel that I'm being supported in that regard, because what was happening is they were playing the illusionary game for so much or so long and brought this carrot in front of them for so long that when they even got there, it's like, this is not satisfying, because they had to sell their true essence away to a certain degree. When I say sell, meaning you don't get to live your life on your terms. You live the life that you got conditioned and programmed or accepted at one point or another. So that's the thing. So the money system was an enslavement. It doesn't work that way, because there's more to how things really work. Now, to go back to karma, that's a good one, because to understand what karma really is in its true form, okay, it's the method that the soul, and this is all souls, meaning the human entity, the body, and also the multidimensional soul. Each one played with what we call karma. What that meant is that if you're going to play a negative role in one lifetime, at some point you would have to play a positive role, experiencing a negative role, so that you can balance the experience. So you had the opportunity to be able to experience a balance. So the soul would have both spectrums. It's because we were living in a split base where separation came about, positive, negative. If you played a negative role, then you would play a positive role, experiencing a negative role, and vice versa. So that was going on. Now, what the purpose of that was to create advancement for the multidimensional soul, for the human entity, which is the earthbound soul, and the body itself. So we have three components. Now, what happened is, because of this requirement of balance, and any time that you came in an incarnation, you would end up playing that role for a lifetime, or a life stream, one life stream, we're going to call it that. In some cases, you would get finished just before that, and then you would switch roles, or start to get to a balanced role. That actually slowed the progress, and it was really important for us to go through this stage that we're going through right now. So in the convergence that happened in 86 going into 87, the need from all levels, the body, the human entity, the soul, to have karma, which is the balancing operating system, experiencing both sides, to negate it, to turn it off, saying we're not going to use that anymore. It doesn't matter where you're at, you're now free. Okay, free meaning that you can switch back and forth anytime you want, and you're not adhered to play one role versus the other anymore. That was to give us the opportunity where we didn't have to have a whole lifetime and a reincarnation before we would switch. It was giving us the opportunity to be able to continue with one life stream to go there. So that happened. So the karma got removed. The need for polarity was also removed, so that we did not have to have a negative experience to appreciate a positive experience, and vice versa. Okay, so that got removed. However, we still had the idea that the only way, which was really supported by the ego, that you have to have pain for gain. Up to that point in time, it was programmed that you needed the polarity to experience it, for you to realize either part of it, which is another extension of karma, but it wasn't really. It had a similarity to it. Then we had this other third code, which was what they call the Satanic Code. And I'm not talking about it in the way that people talk about it normally. This was a self-destruct code. That means I can push myself right to the max and destroy myself before I would actually shift, or the fact that I just would do that. Not only destroy myself, I can destroy anything around me at the same time. And that was plugged in as an option, a live option to be. So that got turned off also in 87. That doesn't mean it's not usable. It just, there was no more requirement. It actually got erased, but the memory would have stayed there. So those are some of the changes that had in 87. And since 87, the frequencies have been going up. And of course, every time we go through a different convergence of sort, that we speed things up. So do we have karma? No, we don't. Now, I know some people will challenge me and say, oh, wait a minute, I see somebody do something negative, and then they get a response that is negative. Well, that's not karma. That is you saying, I need to have something of the same experience so that I can see it so blatantly and feel it, so that I can see the role I'm playing, so I can make an adjustment. So they activate that themselves. It's not karma. It's self-directed. Let me see what the role that I'm taking, so that I can actually create an alteration and move down a different direction. So that's kind of how it works with that, but it's not the karma. Now, a lot of people still give it a lot of power. So he does kind of exist in the sense of people thinking that it's there, and they can live it that way, and they can label it that way. But does it really exist in its true design of what it really was? No.
Thank you, Franco.
You're welcome.
So, you know, people say there's so much, because you were on about the ego and it's getting weaker and weaker. I know you said that, but there's also that I wanted to ask about. When you are unhappy with somebody, you're actually, that's a mirror of yourself. So you're unhappy with self.
Well, you know, let me clarify that. Most of the time what happens is there's two things. You could say, well, they're a mirror of me, a reflection of myself, which is not 100% the case. It's a small percentage, actually, because there was a little bit of a distraction that was created by some people over the years, and all of us got caught up in it to some degree or another, where you're saying, okay, well, if somebody irritates you, they're a mirror, they're showing you what you have, right?
Yeah.
Or, you know, whatever that is. So if you had an anger or whatever it is, that, okay, you're an angry person. Well, or you, if somebody acted angry for you. The thing is, we have to understand, we're going through a process of deprogramming. Now, if somebody plays a role that pisses you off, irritates you, triggers you, they're actually playing a role, believe it or not, that you have asked from a super conscious level. Say, can you play this particular role? You have the best demeanor, the best qualification to play that role, so that I can actually be triggered, and so I can see my program, my perception, story, belief, or whatever it is that's still active and somewhat controlling me, and somewhat a factor of my reality creation. So because somebody irritates you, you could say, okay, first of all, you have to understand, everybody's a role player. Don't say, well, that person's evil. Look, I'm angry because they're treating me this way. Well, they're just playing a role. Always shift it back and say, okay, they're playing this role. Why am I upset? Well, because I feel less than, or I feel criticized. Okay, so I feel criticized. So why does that bother me? Why does it criticizing bother me? And I suggest to write this down when you're doing that, because then what you're going to do is you're going to follow back and see where this leads you to the original story. And sometimes you don't even have to go there, because the original is already somewhat dissolved, but you get to see the path and say, oh, I'm responding because I don't feel good enough. That's my story. Where did I get that from? Oh, my parents said this and that. Yeah, well, they said that, but they wanted really, from a higher perspective, they wanted to have me empower myself to say, I don't care what you say. I know what I am. I know what I feel. I know who I am from that essence. So the point is, if anything, and right now, you know, and it's probably changed for a lot of us, but if you're getting triggered, if you're getting, you know, emotions are coming up, because there's also energies that are supporting us, even if we don't run into each other, it's only bringing up all of this inverted stuff that we've absorbed and conditioned ourselves, so that we can go through the process of unwinding ourselves and clearing that out. Now, I'll share this tool for you, for everybody. And I've shared it in quite a few of my episodes anyways, but the thing is, you have to understand, we're just playmates and we're playing with each other. We're all playing a particular role. You will say things or act a certain way that may piss off certain people. And that is of service, even though you're not consciously aware of it. But from a super conscious level, you are, because you've agreed to play a particular role. So I'm sure all of us at one point or another said something or acted a certain way. And then afterwards, you know, somebody gets triggered and you go, why did I just say that? That doesn't even make any sense. Why? That's not even my nature. Well, because you were requested to play that role on a super conscious level, unaware, and you acted out that way for a trigger for them, and vice versa. You know, somebody's going to say something to you. So right now, not only energetically, it's bringing up emotions, stories, programs, you know, not all of this stuff coming up, but also other individuals as you're playing with. So never blame anybody, always, and don't blame yourself either, because the last thing you want to do is judge yourself. You want to because there's nothing right or wrong, and that's tomorrow's episode if you get to watch that one, because we're going to look at the idea of mistakes. We're going to look at the idea of guilt, the idea of regret, and we're going to look at the idea of fear, how it actually plays for us. That's the tomorrow's episode. But anyways,
what time would that be, Franco?
That would be 4 p.m. Eastern time. So in UK, that would be, I guess, 9 p.m.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Yes, yes. And wherever you are, you just have to find where you're at in your part, but it's 4 p.m. Eastern time. Anyways, the replays will all be there anyways if you can't join us at that time, depending on what time it is for you guys. But I'll be talking about that. So the thing is, right now, as we're going through all the things that are going on at the moment, we're letting go of all of our old ideas, perceptions, and labels and definitions and so forth, so that you can actually embody more of yourself. You'll be able to access more of yourself. So everybody's talking about going into 5D. Well, the truth is, we're going from inverted 2D, inverted 3D, to organic 3D and organic 5D. Both platforms are available, and Gaia is supportive to that. The inverted matrix has been removed over a year ago. The moon has been turned off over a year ago. But the thing is, the ego is still active. Even though the ego is getting no support, support is still operating. Now, you have to understand, keep in mind, whatever you see in the media may seem like, oh, it's just information, whatever else. That's fine. And it's true, it's just information. But pay attention how it makes you feel, because the media is still very much tuned to keep your ego alive and active and stimulated and excited to play the polarized world, because it's still reflecting that. So the ego is, oh yeah, those are the bad guys, we're the good guys, we're the victim, they're the victimizer, blah, 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 and all of that. Because the ego operates in that realm, and that's the way it keeps it. So it's about paying attention where your focus is. Yeah, if it's going to trigger you, that's great. But if you keep putting all that stuff in, it's only stimulating the ego. And the thing is, it creates, and as long as you're actually using that information to shape your reality, and then your reality, ends up being your experience. And we're not here to judge our experience. Our experience is awesome no matter what it looks like, because the labeling, through your true self, who you are, you see things for what it is. You're a playmate on a playground, having fun with other playmates, which are all aspects of you. And we're just going through a process of purging out all the 2D, inverted 3D, and going into our more natural state. And realizing, because what is consciousness? It's awareness that you're a spirit in action and having a human experience. Now, organic 3D is already a huge upgrade in itself from what we experience, and organic 5D is also a huge upgrade. But it's really about the focus, because what's the difference between organic 3D and organic 5D? Organic 3D is aware of itself, but is enjoying the human experience and actually puts a little bit more focus on what the human experience is like. The organic 5D it's aware of itself, but puts a little less attention to the physical realm, even though it's playing in the physical realm, being in physical body, but also puts a little bit more attention into the consciousness of spirit, and able to shape its physical representation and how it plays to match that higher dimensional consciousness. So there's just the access is just slightly different, so that it gives itself the opportunity. Is one better than the other? No. The only reason you may be in organic 3D is because there's certain parts that you want to still experience that you haven't experienced, and then you go into 5 anyways. There's a sequence of time that I've shared in my episodes, if you want to check back on that, because I want to keep in motion here so I don't end up using up all my time or your guys' time to say all these things and then not cover all the things we want to cover. So.
And would you say, we got 24 hours in a day, but is that more like 16 hours in a day now?
Yeah, if you compare it to what time felt like before, yes, it's actually less than that now.
I thought it
Um,
might be.
yeah, it's almost like half,
Oh,
slightly. Yeah, it's about almost half.
I mean, look at last year. It just flew, didn't it? Literally flew.
Yes. So there is no time, there is no space, but time and space was plugged in as part of a reference point because that's what we wanted to create as an idea while experiencing physical form. That's all. So time is so flexible. It's really how you tune into it. As our vibration increases, as it has been, time seems shorter and shorter and shorter. For someone that's really into 2D inverted 3D, will notice it a lot less.
Yeah.
But the ones that are going into everything is accentuated. What is it? What is really time? It's a sequence of changes that are speeding up. So in fact, that there is one sequence of change after the other with less space in between for integration time. That's all it is. So there's less pauses. So there's less pauses so that we're constantly changing every moment, everything that's going on. Before, it moved a lot slower, so our reference of time seemed slower and it seemed longer. Now everything is speeded up because the way we see time, or what we see sequences of changes, have speeded up.
Wonderful. I'm going to have a look now at the questions. Just well, if there's any questions, it might just be hellos. But very dark evening. Franco. 1957 was a very good vintage year. Hi, Franco. Could you share any influence from Egyptian times which may be affecting us now? That's from Ali Rennie.
Yeah, the only thing about Egyptian time, I mean, every incarnation that we've had, our bodies have gone through the Egyptians' time. So has the human entity, because the human entity has been here full 15,000 years. Because right now we're at 15,000 years. It's been there from day one. So it has its whole history of experiences from the time it came in and before, but it does not have access to prior to that. So if you're talking about Atlantean times or the Lemurian times or anything of that nature, it doesn't have access to that. The physicality has a very small amount of access to that history, because every time it's retooled, a lot of the memory is kind of, not, I wouldn't say erased, but put into an archive. What do they call it? There's a name for it, Akashic records of sorts. So, you know, how was I going to say it? So there is memory from that. Now, for your multidimensional soul, may have been involved here at certain times, so you may have some influence of that. Is it impede us? Does it actually control us in any way? No, it is memories. So the other thing about the speeding up of time, you're going to notice once upon a time, like I can tell you from my own experience working with thousands of people over the years, okay? These are one-on-one people in sessions and so forth. The thing is, the life regressional work that I used to do was not really required after 2013. It's like occasionally I was doing it, where before it was required. So there would be memories that were kind of locked up in a different experience of physical form that had to be revisited and brought forth to kind of switch the viewpoint of that time, including even in this lifetime. So you had to bring in all of that to the forefront to be able to see it in a more open, conscious way of observing. Now, with everything that's going on, with the huge movement forward at the speed that it's going through, that which changed is that no matter what you've experienced, just comes up as real time, but it's really just the program, the emotion. You don't have to even revisit the past. Now, there'll be the odd occasion that it wants your attention there because of something that is necessary to extract from that. And that only happens to a small degree. You'll notice now, you won't even notice, because at times when you're having emotions coming up or programs coming up, it's not It's not like, oh, it's in this lifetime. Well, where did that come from? Yeah, and people say it's the past lifetime. Yeah, it's because your human entity is sharing something of that nature. Sometimes it's also your soul may be sharing it, and sometimes it's your body sharing it. And this is one of the things I had to work with people when I was doing regressions. We had to look at them separately and say, okay, we're going to now regress and we're going to look at what the human entity has to offer. And then we had to look at what the soul had to offer. And usually you can tell which one had something to bring up from a past life and then bring it forth. So now that necessity is not there any longer like it was before. So everything comes up. And the reason for that is so that everything moves a lot faster and you're able to clear all of that stuff. So the Egyptians times, if there's any locked up energies and anything that didn't get finished, it's coming up to the surface now, but it won't represent so much of the Egyptian time. Now, there are some energies locked into the collective and locked into the stuff that's getting purged from the planet, that a lot of the beings that used to be here and some that are still here and leaving out, and some of the entities that have kind of taken on some of those have little fragments of that. So some of those memories may come or play out a particular role, but it doesn't have the same impact that they would have before.
We need a week with you. Hello, I have to pop off early and we'll catch up replay. Love, Franco. Have a question. I am at the stage of my rather rapid awakening journey of feeling through reconciling how I feel and know my soul and the human DeNicola experience I have. I almost feel like two entities. What insight and recommendations might you have around this?
Okay. Well, entities are basically labeled labeled selves, but the thing is, and I'm glad that question came up, because right now what's representing is your true you. That is your essence, the reason that you're here, a deeper understanding of that higher aspect. And then you have different identities that the ego likes to present of the labels that you have absorbed and played through from birth till now. Okay. Now, the other thing is and some of you may have already started to experience this, is that we have multiple versions of ourselves that we have created in experiencing our life. For example, you go visit your family, you step into a version of yourself that is most relatable and relating to your family dynamics. So if they are playing a particular role, they have a certain, way of cultural support or whatever it is, you kind of create a shifting. So you've created an identity of yourself in front of your family. You may have another identity of yourself, say in the work environment. You have an identity with your own personal home family connection, if there's one involved. And then you have others with friends. So you can see that, and if you're in a religious, you'll show yourself of another version of that self. So the process that we're going through right now, and all the labels. So for example, well, I'm such and such because this is my education, this is this, your credentials, your definitions of who you are. I'm a doctor, I'm a this, I'm a that, whatever that may be. I'm just using that as examples. The process we're going through now is dissolving all of those things, because the last thing you want to do is label yourself as anything, and you want to be one. You want to be your true essence wherever you are. If you're going to go family, you're going to be you. You're not going to be concerned if they're going to accept you or not accept you, or they're going to be scandalized or whatever it is. You're going to be you. And you're not going to go in you as charged you. You're going in as neutral you, meaning that you're you. You're not going in, well, I'll show them, I'll play this role. I'm going to be myself. You're not going to go that. You're just going to be yourself. And they may offer certain things and say, wow, such and such, you changed. How come you're acting this way? And say, well, I come up to new realization, and I'm this is how I feel now. This is me. This is me, because I wasn't being me, but I didn't understand who me was before. you can just share it as that. And because you want that part of you. So you're going to basically dissolve. You're going to be you wherever you're going. You're going to be at work. You're going to be with friends. You're going to be with family. You're going to be with your own personal self, and whatever else that you're going to be. You're going to be that higher aspect of you. So the labels are going to drop. It doesn't matter if you're a doctor, if you're a lawyer, if you are a teacher, if you are just, you know, a waitress or whatever they call it, servers these days. Whatever you are, it doesn't matter. You know, whatever role you play, it's no longer the role or the credentials, because every role you take on creates a limit. Every credential you take on creates a limit, which was great to play with, and it's, you know, great experience. But the last thing you want is a label. You want to just be you. So in fact, you're still going to play the role if you choose to, but the role is not you anymore. You do not identify with the role. You're being you playing that role. But of course, the role is going to be played differently because you're not, you know, getting caught up in the character, and you're not, you know, creating a facade or twisting or, you know, shaping yourself and say, well, with these people, I can only talk this way or whatever it is. Now, you're not going to go out there and say, well, I'm this and that, whatever it is. Because the moment you label yourself, you're minimizing yourself. You're this powerful being, and you don't even say to yourself you're a powerful being, because that's just a knowing. You're just a powerful being. You're a spirit in action, a spirit in experiencing. And all of us, with our combination, all have unique expressions that you've come here to offer and to be playing a part. And that's the call right now. It's dropping all the labels, dropping all the things that you are, credentials, ideas of who you are, or I don't know who I am. You know, when people say, I don't know who I am anymore, that's great. Drop it. Because then you'll discover who you are. And it doesn't have a label. It's just you. You are essence. You're having this beautiful experience. You're going to play different roles, and that's all you're here to do. Play different roles. But the roles are going to be natural. It's going to feel harmonious. Because look at it this way. How many times have you gone to, say, family, or you've gone to friends and so forth, and you're playing a role and there's an interaction going on? But if you pay attention, when you leave, or even when you're there sometimes, it may feel icky a little bit. You may feel, you know, you may not be able to label it right away, but you feel like you weren't yourself, you know, and there's a ickiness. Why? Because your vibration is increasing, but to go play that role, at times you got to lower your frequency. You got to lower your frequency. You got to lower your essence so you can play there. That's a great little visit, but right now the call is to stay at a higher vibration. And the thing is, it's not just you vibrating. When you say go to your family that is at a lower vibration, say down here, and you're up here, you going there at that vibration, it doesn't make you superior. You're going into that vibration. You're being you. And what you're doing is affecting their lower vibration in a way, kind of bringing it up, or at least seeding that frequency. And it's up to them. If they want to still play there, that's okay. But you're not lowering yourself, saying, I'm going to go a little bit more unconscious and be able to talk a certain way. And just the fact that you're saying, well, you know, I'm this or that or whatever it is, that's still at a lower vibration. So you basically, you're not saying anything. You're just being you. And if a conversation comes up, it's just a conversation, right? And like, for example, I say to people, because people ask, well, how do you communicate with people that are, you know, still very asleep? And you go, well, you communicate at the terms they understand. But at the same time, I don't go and say, oh, you're wrong, or this is how it is. I'm sharing that with you guys now, but because you guys are open to it. But at the same time, from the people that are not, if they ask the question, if we're in a conversation, I say, you know, in my observation and my experience and the stuff that I've been doing and so forth, this is what I've realized and this is what I've noticed. And I started using that as part of my experience. And I noticed that I feel much more aligned. I feel better, whatever it is, you know. So you share it as an observation, you share it as a personal experience or whatever it is, but not never telling them this is the way it is, because then they will inquire. And if they inquire, say, well, this is what I observed and whatever else, right? So does my family know what I just shared with you? No, they don't ask. And they don't want to ask. I'm talking about my extended family. I'm not talking about my immediate. But my immediate is, they've had to kind of align, or else they run away. But, you know, at the same time, that's their choice. But yeah, they're not open to it. That's okay. But wherever I go, I'm still me. I don't have different versions of myself. And it's the same thing. That's the call for you guys, to be that genuine upgrading version of yourself without ever, you know, readjusting yourself. Because the thing is, right now, it's important to keep just expanding, growing, and your vibration increasing. You know, you don't want to take steps back, because it just takes a little bit more effort to go back, and it can feel, the ego can get a grab of you when you go to that lower state, because then it's going, oh, see, you know, you did this, you did that. And sometimes it likes to use your even higher self part. It says, oh, yeah, see, you weren't a good example. You didn't do this or that. It's just there to kind of bring your vibration down. And whenever your ego is chatting that way, see it as a kid, see it as a playful kid, and say, oh, very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. But we're not going there.
Brilliant.
Thank you. I love you, but see you later.
That is really good advice. Thank you, Franco. I'm just going to go, because of the time, we've already gone over what I said it would be, but I'm sure people won't mind. I did say earlier, it might be a long conversation tonight. But there is so many other messages here. So just as a quick, you know, if you could do a quick answer on them. Is our soul group then just the playmates that we're here with, or are they a specific group?
No. We have several things. We have soulmates, we have twin souls, we have soul families, and each one of us are connected to an oversoul, which is the reason it's called oversoul. It's the nucleus of the souls. So all of us have a twin soul, which basically your soul has a specific signature to operate in a certain spectrum of frequency. You have another soul, a twin soul, that has exactly the same same signature, that may be in body or out of body, could be on this planet, could be on another planet, could be whatever. And we have a direct communication of that. So that's your twin soul, sometimes referred to as twin flame. Then you have your soul, the rest of your soul family, and the soul family is a cluster. So you have the oversoul, and you have 20, the cluster is made up of 24 souls. So that's 12 souls, each one with a duplicate signature. So there's 12 duplicates. So there's 12 different souls with different signatures, but each one has two versions of itself with the same signature. So we have the oversoul. So that's the soulmates are souls that you've had possibly other lives with, or before incarnating, that you may have made agreements to play with each other and so forth. So everybody that you're interacting with at some point or another, and that you establish a connection, a very strong connection, can be your soulmate. And the mate is just a friend from a soul perspective to play a specific role for each other and to kind of keep yourselves accountable. The thing is, all of us are connected to different, not only different playmates, what we call soulmates, but you're connected to the oversoul, and in the oversoul, you have the experience and consciousness of all these souls that share in there. Plus, you can communicate directly to your twin soul. All of this is from your heart, by the way. The twin soul, the oversoul, which is basically your soul family, is all connected through your heart, that level of communication. So you're not only communicating with your soul, you're connecting with the soul family and your twin soul. Your third eye is basically now you're connecting to other souls that are from other clusters within there. But you will meet people that you feel gravitate. Could be a parent, could be a sibling, could be a partner, could be friends, could be whatever, an age variance, whatever it may be, that you have a strong connection to. Those are soulmates. There's a recognition, there's an agreement to come in each other's lives to play a particular role, and that's all it is. So there's various levels of soul, and that's just the multidimensional soul. And then you have the human entity, and that has a lot of other connection that go, but that's going to take a while to explain. So we can
Oh my gosh,
play that with another time.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Might be a good idea if we could book up another session with you, because
Absolutely.
there's
Absolutely.
just so much that's come up for, well, for me, and for, you know, because when you said the moon has been switched off, I wanted to say more about that. It's been switched off. Will it be taken out, or is it needed? Because like I thought, so much evolves around the moon, like the full moon and the new moon, and you know how it affects us.
Yes, the thing is, we have to understand that the moon itself no longer has the same effect before. Like you notice, whenever you had the full moon, it actually gravitated strong emotions, a different balance within your operating system, your energy field in your body. It created a lot of changes, and it created cycles and so forth. Now it doesn't have the same influence anymore, but the moon itself is still reflecting the sunlight, where before, even though it was reflecting the sunlight to a certain degree, it was still overridden by the transmission that it was doing. Now, the moon will be eventually removed. I don't know when, but right now there's a lot of people that still rely on it, because it would be shocking not to have the moon anymore. So it's there. Is it affecting our cycle? Pay attention to it. You will notice you're not going to feel the same intensities you would feel a couple of years ago and before that, when the moon would be full moon, new moon, and all the different stages. Most of what you still experience is the memory being activated, the memory within yourself to say, oh, it's a full moon, and then it activates old memories. And and when I say old memories, your body will now replicate what it used to, but not to the same degree, at a much lower degree than it used to before. So it is not impacting us, because the moon adjusts quite a few things for us, and it actually created accentuation of certain polarities depending on the phase of the moon. But that is now just the memory component that we're working out of.
Wow. I'll just quickly fly through it. Thank you. Have to go now. Very enlightening. Will the V affect? I think I've missed one. Oh yeah, Belinda, because Belinda knows you. I think you know Belinda.
Hi, Belinda.
Yeah. How is the collective doing as far as upgrading, and what might we see with the spring equinox?
Yes. Well, we are definitely in motion, and things are accentuating. Of course, it's going to look very powerful in the polarized aspect of it. The polarization that we're experiencing now, the accentuation and people kind of acting out in a very crazy way of sorts. I'm just using that as a simple label just for relatability. Is only really to stimulate more and more people to awaken, to come to a realization, wait a minute, this is not what I choose to support any longer, and also to be able to see certain things. We've been going through some pretty powerful, there's even some yesterday, today, and tomorrow, of really powerful influxes. This stage that started the middle of February will go to the middle of March. The equinox that we're talking about, there's some other really major changes that will occur, stimulations and so forth, that will take place. So we're going to notice some pretty heavy alterations in April, and then more in June as we continue to move along. Right now, as much as we would have loved to see more changes, it's still overwhelming for a lot of people for all of the stuff that's going on. But even the craziness, if you want to call it that, and even the pressure to being locked down or whatever else, it's really there to trigger within ourselves, first of all, sovereignty, realization of your free will, and empowerment. Okay? So we're all sovereign beings. We are all designing our lives according to our terms. We've always had free will. We've never, ever lost free will. We were just convinced how to use it. I know some people say, well, we don't have free will. No. It's always there and it can never be removed. That was one thing they could not interfere with. Sovereignty couldn't be interfered with. However, we'll teach you how to use it by programming you to use your free will to create your own prison, to create your own inverted experience, inverted world. That's the thing. This is the reason why all the media, all the different resources, education, and each other have been supporting this inverted matrix so that we would use our free will, we would use our own empowerment to create the reality that we're convinced that we should create. And so that now that's part of the discovery that we're having, self-discovery, and also the fact that, wait a minute, I actually can design this any which way I choose. There is no prison. It is an illusionary part. Now, of course, you want to be in the most neutral state because remember, there are multiple realities in one reality. Depending on how you feel, how your energy is, you will see different versions of people. You can go to a store, you can go somewhere and not wear a mask, not because you're upset about wearing a mask. You don't even put any focus in that. You're not even noticed. Invisible in a sense, because that reality is not going to push back at you because you're not going in there with the idea that, no, I got to prove my point. I got to do this. I got to do that, because a lot of people do that. So you want to get to the point of it's just the game, whatever it is. So if you still feel that, you just put it on, whatever it is. And, but at the same time, that's an option, but that's all going to dissolve. As you can see, even depending if you're in North America, whatever it is, with the political stuff, it's really accentuated. And even what was put in that actually supports a lot of the reverse, it's played out so intensified, so chaotic, so unreasonable that so we can see it and say, hey, wait a minute, I can see all of the things I couldn't see, and it's so blatant in front of my eyes. What do I choose to do with this now? How do I choose? And then it allows us to connect with inside and say, okay, what do I choose to create as my reality? Let me give you one tool that I want to share. And I know I've shared this before, but on anything that comes up, acknowledge it. So if you're going somewhere and you feel like a rebel, or you feel angry, or you feel violated, or feel whatever, or somebody plays a role, acknowledge it. Acknowledge its presence. Acknowledge that that is playing out within you. Acknowledge it. Then go into gratitude. Thank it. Appreciate that role, that opportunity, that intensification for a powerful opportunity of advancing yourself. So if you thank it, forget about forgiveness. Throw that out the window. That is another construct, okay, that actually still supports polarization. I know it's that weird. I won't even explain the whole thing, maybe in another talk. But the thing is, even the Ho'oponopono, whatever they call that statement, they have actually changed it. They took away two of the parts.
No, so I've been trained in that. What is it?
Well, I'm sorry. What was it?
I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. Thank you. Oh, and now it's just I love you. Thank you.
I love you and thank you. The only two that's left.
That's the only two that's needed now.
Exactly. Yeah. Because the thing is, you're thanking everybody for the roles that they played. You're thanking yourself for the beautiful role that you played. So what I'm saying is you acknowledge what's coming up. You appreciate it. Thank it. Thank it for that opportunity. Then blast it with love. I send it love because it was a beautiful co-creation. And then with that love, you can take it and offer it into the field where it actually becomes pure source essence again. Nothing exists until we create it, and we're the ones that create it. The other thing we're shifting from is from manifestation to creation. There's a difference. Manifestation to creation. Manifestation is copying something that already exists from someone else or some other group. I want to manifest money. I want to manifest this. I want to manifest a great relationship or whatever it is. What you're doing is you're using an old template to bring forth something, which is fine. You want to play, that's great. But the shift is into creation. What is creation? Creation is creating something that doesn't exist yet, not in physical form. You're tapping into source essence, your higher self, and you're now creating through imagination a reality that supersedes anything that's been experienced. So in fact, instead of saying, I'm going to manifest more money, you're now creating an environment that doesn't even use it. It doesn't even exist. And you have access to everything. And it's not socialism or communism or anything of that nature. No, that's all made up, every part of it. You're now using your creation ability to access and create and bring to reality on this playground what we have not experienced yet.
Franco, I love you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank
Wow,
you.
that is amazing. What a wonderful evening. I'm going to leave it there. There is more questions, but you will come back, won't you?
Absolutely. I'd love to play with you guys.
Oh my gosh, I'm so grateful. Honestly, I've loved this evening. It's so much information. Thank you.
Well, the information also carries a very powerful energy within it. So you've been stirred, activated, and you're becoming more as you go along, more empowered in your truest form essence that you are, because we're all magnificent.
Absolutely. Every one of us, powerful, magnificent. Do you live in the mindfulness in the moment now as much as possible?
Yes, yes. Well, it's almost hard to not be in the moment.
Yeah.
You get to that point. It's the key here with the moment is to pay attention to what moment you're focusing on. And what I mean, you can be in the moment, but if you're in the moment still bringing forth an old experience, you're not looking back at the past, but you're using old methods of perceiving. You want to pay attention to this because you want to be in the moment and in the most current. So you look at your environment and say, how can I play with this environment? Where do I shape? This is where creativity and imagination comes into play. And you're not, because you can be in the moment and still be in that moment, bringing that old version of you, that old experience or whatever it is, or what, look at the world and say, okay, I'm going to bring in the moment what I see and still have a label around that. But no, you're going to look at the playground and your moment is now newness. It's new creation, new expression.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you all so much for joining us this evening.
Yeah, it was so
I hope
great.
you've enjoyed it. I can't see you could not really. So thank you all. Lovely. Thank you so much, Franco.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you guys. It was fantastic. You guys are all amazing. Much love to you, all of you. You guys are powerful. Go out and play. Have a